Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. It's a true honor and zchus for us to host this webinar, bringing together Jews from all over the world and all different backgrounds. This webinar series is not anything we could have imagined a few short weeks ago, but Nistarim Darkei Hashem, God's ways are hidden. And our goal in creating the series is to hopefully provide some tips and expert guidance for managing our own emotions during these turbulent times and keeping our sanity and emotional well-being intact. When Fresh Start opened a few short years ago, our goal was to provide services and programming to help Klal Yisrael heal from past experiences, including childhood abuse, trauma, and neglect. But here we are today, and the trauma is present, and the current events are causing many of us to feel anxiety, fear, and a host of other issues and possibly behaviors we may have thought we buried a long time ago. We hope this webinar series will help us navigate through these emotionally difficult times. I want to specifically express our tremendous appreciation to Dr. Janina Fisher, a leading voice in the world of mental health and healing, for being with us today and sharing your insight, your compassion, and your empathy with us during these turbulent times. To learn more about Fresh Start, please visit our website, jewishfreshstart.com. I would also like to thank our anonymous sponsor, who has graciously sponsored this webinar series, לעילוי נשמת Daniel ben Esther, Rafal ben Leah, Mair Yehuda ben Yosef HaKohen, and in honor of Tzadok Eliyahu and Seligson, two true pillars of the Detroit community. Joining us today from Eretz Yisrael, we have Rabbi Shimon Russell, co-founder and chief clinical and retreat supervisor at Fresh Start. Rabbi Russell, LCSW, is a psychotherapist in private practice in Jerusalem. He holds an MSW from Rutgers Graduate School of Social Work and completed the clinical externship program at the prestigious Ackerman Institute for Family Therapy in New York. He is a popular author and speaker who has presented on many mental health related topics throughout the world. He is the co-author of the recently released bestseller, Raising a Loving Family. We will also be joined by Mrs. Tova Korn, co-founder and program director of Fresh Start. And lastly, Dr. Janina Fisher, whom we lovingly call Bubby Janina, at least in our work here. Dr. Janina Fisher is a licensed medical psychologist and a former instructor at Harvard Medical School, an international expert on the treatment of trauma. She's an advisory member of the Trauma Research Foundation and the author of 3 books, Healing the Fragmented Selves of Trauma Survivors, Transforming the Living Legacy of Trauma, a workbook for survivors and therapists, and the Living Legacy Instructional Flipchart. She is best known for her work on integrating mindfulness-based interventions into trauma treatment, and she is also the creator of the Trauma-Informed Stabilization Treatment Therapy. Dr. Fisher also serves as senior clinical supervisor for Fresh Start. And with that being said, I would like to introduce Rabbi Shimon Russell to begin this very important discussion. Rabbi Russell?
Sure. Thank you, Yochanan, and thank you very much. This is not, something we had ever anticipated or wish we were doing. On the other hand, whatever we can do to reach out, every one of us wants to do something. I know from my own experience in talking to people all week, we need to do something. We can't just sit there. Any of us just sit there, frozen and listening to social media. We need to do something. So I have to tell you for myself, this is actually quite healing. It's quite a healing experience to prepare for this, think about this, and try and do something to help other members of Klal Yisrael. I think it's what we all should be doing as a major part of our own healing and stabilization as we go through this difficult time. So Dr. Fisher, it's good to see you again.
Yes.
We're indebted to you for what you've done for us in Fresh Start and helping guide us. It's just wonderful to work with you again and see you. And what we're going to have is a conversation, I hope, that we can talk about some of the things that are happening. So we're just really grateful to you. And, let's see if we can walk through this. I'd like to give a little background first. And just this is for everyone there. I'm calling from Israel. I live here. It's quite possible, and I just want to point this out, that at any moment there could be a siren going off and I will have to go into the safe room in my apartment. It takes a minute or two as a rocket came over. A rocket came over just yesterday, and we had to go into the safe room. You know, this is part of our reality now. There won't be questions. I won't explain it. I'll just get up and go. And I want to start exactly with that when this first started on the first days, so rockets fell near us. And my children were visiting from America, and my grandchildren. And we were here over the holiday, over Sukkot. And it was just after Sukkot, and the rockets went off, and we went into the mamad. And I sat with everyone, and it was the very first thought, you know, to talk to my family about how should we relate to this. And the thing I said to them at the time was, we're here in this mamad, we're in this safe room. You know, every building has a safe, reinforced, safe room where we're meant to go when the sirens go off. We're here not because we're terrified, not because we think we're going to be hit. We're here because it's the mature and responsible thing to do. And if every citizen, when you hear a siren, simply go into the safe room, just responsibly, and maybe we'll say a little Tillim, a little Psalms while we're in there, that we should all be safe, but not to go in there with the fear that any moment I'm going to be hit and I'm just waiting to hear that my building just got destroyed and I'm safe in my safe room. In fact, it's exceedingly unlikely. Jerusalem, where I live, is 100 square miles. The likelihood is exceedingly slim. But we know if we're all responsible and mature. So we act even in a moment that could be terrifying without terror, but acting as mature and responsible people. This was the message I gave to the family. And then we spoke more about the history. And I'd like to just sort of bring us up to date of what it is we're looking for from you. And if I can just express a little context. As a nation, we are unafraid. As the people of Israel, we have spent our lifetime since Pharaoh in Egypt and Mitzrayim tried to destroy us, and the Greeks tried to destroy us, through the Spanish Inquisition, the time of the Crusades, the Holocaust in our own time, where 6 million were destroyed. We always survive. There are many murderous attempts at our destruction. We as a nation will survive. We always do, and we will. We have no question about that as a nation. In fact, Wikipedia, it's just fascinating, lists 71 expulsions and attempts of genocide of the Jews throughout history, 71. This is not new to us. This is what we live with. Here in the modern state of Israel, it's even more focused. The day after the United Nations gave us this land, all our neighbors rose up with the express intent of killing every Jew that lived in this land, and they failed. It happened again in 56. It happened again in the Six-Day War in 67. It happened the Yom Kippur War in 73. Since 73, there have been no less than 11 times the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, has been called on to protect our citizens from terrorists, the PLO, from Hezbollah, from Hamas. This is what we live with as a nation. We live amongst a trauma and traumatic experiences. All of us know it. We all know someone who has been affected profoundly, hurt, killed, or kidnapped. We all know someone. What Hamas did now takes it to a level that's, this is what terrorists, what they want to do is sow terror into us. And what they're really doing is psychological warfare. They want us all to be terrified. In fact, if we have any power over these people who want to destroy us, kill us, maim us, rape, torture us, if we have any power, it's not to be terrified. It's to be mature and responsible, as I said before, to protect ourselves, to be safe, but not to be terrified. So we want to work out how to regulate ourselves, how to take control of ourselves so we don't live with terror in our lives, which is exactly what they want, which is exactly feeding into their power. That's not what we want. We know as a nation we're going to survive. We have faith in our God. And our God has said that we are his people and that he will protect us. We know that's not the issue as a nation. But there is a very big concern while not on a national level, on an individual level, on a personal level. Many of us as individuals, as people, we are close to this story. I went last night to a Shiva house of a young man who I'm close with, very, very, very close with, who lost 2 brothers on the first day of this, were killed by Hamas. And we just sat there without words. We just connected, we said. There were no words. There were no words. Everyone fears. This is worldwide. This is here. This is certainly in Israel, and it's certainly in abroad. People are fear that there's like a random terrorist around the corner. You know, everyone knows someone, as I said, everyone knows someone who knows someone. That's how small we are as a nation. That's how tiny we are, that we all know someone who knows someone directly who's been affected. So what are we looking for? This is, I want to just set the stage for you. And, I'd rather listen to you than listen to myself here. Okay, that's what we're here for. But here's some of the things I want to just say to you that I'm hearing directly from friends, from clients all week. I can't focus. It's hard to think, or it's hard to work. I can't stop thinking about it, these images, the potential danger. I'm feeling very scared. I'm feeling panicky. I feel like I'm on high alert every second. I can't eat. I got no appetite. My child is, one lady came and told me, my child doesn't want to go to the bathroom. They don't want to be locked alone in a bathroom. They're scared to go to the bathroom. Many people feel unsafe to go out of their house or to take public transport. I've even had people tell me, is this the beginning of World War III? Like, what's happening? There's real fear amongst us. And I think all of us on some level have some of this fear. So talking about trauma, talking about how it affects us, I wonder if we could start, if that would be, to me, I think it's a good place to start is, can you give words to us? What is happening in our body? What does such a traumatic event like this do to us? How does it, where is the trauma? How does it affect us? What happens naturally to our bodies when we get exposed to an event like this? Is that an okay place to start?
Oh, absolutely. Because as you were talking, I was thinking, we can be determined not to be terrified by Hamas, but we can't change the fact that the body responds to danger with fear. And it's adaptive. Everyone should be thanking their fear. Oh, thank you, fear, for trying to alert me to the danger. The problem, of course, is how do we manage the fear so that it's adaptive? Because we certainly don't want people to not be afraid. As you say, you have to go to the safe room. That's just a way of life. And
yes, you mean it. Right. You're referring to adaptive as opposed to maladaptive, where it dysfunctions and you can't go to work. Whereas adaptive would be where, yes, I'm fully aware, but I can function on high alert, which is exactly what the body's trying to get me to do. Is that what you're saying?
But it's extremely uncomfortable to live with that much fear, even if it's adaptive. Even if, I remember my trip to Jerusalem to speak in 2018, when things were very peaceful relatively, but there was so much fear because anything could happen. And we forget that the body is designed to anticipate, not just react. And so even in good times, there were always these reminders that there were people out to get the Jews. And so that you live with that hypervigilance, that startle response, and it's all adaptive, but it's very exhausting and very demoralizing, and even more demoralizing when we all have the images and these stories of what people have been through and could go through in the weeks and months to come.
there's sort of a paradox, isn't there, in that? That you know, from a healthy perspective, we must know what's happening. To put our heads in the sand would be foolish. That's not what the body wants from us. And it's really, I think that's how God made us. He doesn't want us to ignore it and pretend it's not there. On the other hand, saturating ourselves with it brings us to a place of heightened fear, that it would seem there's a place that everyone needs to know within themselves that, yes, I'm aware, and I don't need to know all the, you know, repeated details more and more and more. That's not helping me adapt, I think. Am I saying this right? It wouldn't be helping me adapt to dealing with it the way I should be. That would then go towards maladaptive again.
Right. And of course, it's very hard to control it because, you know, you're lying in bed at night, our minds are empty, and what fills them are thoughts, feelings, and images that then alarm the body all over again. And so we might have to talk to our bodies, and just because I think it's easy for anyone to say, of course I can't sleep. How could anyone possibly sleep? But we know in the service of what you said, the survival of the Jewish people, it's actually imperative that people try to eat. The body will tell you not to, because we're designed to lose our appetites when we need to flee or fight.
Correct. Right.
So it's going to be very much like putting gas in the car. It's going to have to be an intellectual decision. I eat whether I'm hungry or not because I need the food to fight. I need the food to survive.
That's correct. So what should a listener, what could they be looking for in themselves to recognize they're having a traumatic reaction? Like a lot of people are unfamiliar. You know, we live in this world, we work in this world daily, so it's like second nature to us. But a lot of people, for the first time in their lives, are considering they're having a traumatic reaction. This is new to them. So what could you like give some ideas that people could recognize, wow, I can recognize I'm actually having a traumatic reaction. What might they see?
Well, what they're most likely to see are fear, anger, and what will feel like depression, what will feel like hopelessness, and again, different from grief, because of course we have many, many, many people grieving, which again is perfectly normal. It has to be part. And it's hard to grieve and fight for your life at the same time. So usually the fight for your life responses override the grief responses.
Correct, right.
So people may say, I don't know why I'm so numb, but that's your body trying to keep you in a state that ensures survival.
So let me take you to, if you don't mind, probably the most, and by the way, there are many, many therapists, I've been told, who are watching us and listening in as we are all groping to work out how to deal with something that for most people, most of us therapists have never really known well. I know for myself, it's probably the greatest challenge in all trauma treatment I attempt to do. Doesn't matter which modality I may be using. You know, we all try to be a bit eclectic and you do integrate everything, you know, the way you do it so superbly. Here's the big question that I think certainly the therapists will appreciate, and I hope everyone else will too. You know, when we talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, the P resoundingly stands for post. Right. It doesn't stand for present. And here comes the challenge to all of us, because we do PTSD work and we have models we're all trained in and we work with them, but they make an assumption of post.
Right.
Here we're living in it. As I said to you, I'm sitting here. I'm actually fully aware of not heightened anxiety doing this, because I enjoy doing this, but I'm aware of heightened anxiety literally as I'm listening out. I have an app on my phone that tells me when rockets are falling. Now I put it on the silent, but if in my peripheral vision, every like 5 minutes is picking it up. Like I can't escape the fact I'm aware there might be a siren and I got to go to them, you know, and who knows what's going to happen. We're all aware of that. Someone strange walks into my building. We're all texting each other. Do you know who that person was? Right away, we're like,
yes, is it friend or foe?
Post is not PTSD. It's present. It's present. What do we have? What can we say? You know, to reflect upon this for a few minutes. It'll be really helpful.
Right. And therapists are trained to work with events that have already happened. And trauma resolution or recovery has to happen once we know we're safe. But that's not the situation in Israel.
And it's everywhere, not just Israel. I think everywhere in the world, I'm speaking to relatives and friends everywhere in the world, they're going outdoors worried. You know, you see, I remember 9/11 when I worked in Brooklyn, in Borough Park in those days, 1 day a week. And I drove the day after 9/11 across the Verzano Narrows Bridge to Brooklyn. And I remember having a panic attack on the bridge, being next to a big white van. Wildest dreams would never, and I was having a panic attack. I couldn't be so grateful when I got across that bridge. Now, we're living present. Can you, Dr. Fisher, what can you bring to us to help us all with present traumatic stress disorder?
And Rabbi Russell, if I could just chime in here, I think there's a few different elements. There's the present element, Dr. Janina. There's also people who are experiencing that this is bringing up a lot from the past.
Jochen, that's my next question.
Okay, a lot from the past. And then we have therapists on the call that are trying to figure out how they help their clients. So yes.
Yeah,
go ahead.
To present traumatic, the new diagnosis, present traumatic stress disorder. What do we do?
Right. And you know, this is something that people have experienced, right? And it's just that it's right here in front of us. And because of our technology, we're all experiencing it.
Correct. Correct.
And of course, if you're in Israel, you're experiencing it at a dramatically heightened level.
Correct.
So, you know, typically when we're dealing with post-traumatic stress, we try to help people to access their vulnerability, access how they felt. And that is not necessarily adaptive. I mean, obviously, we don't want to be indifferent to what people are feeling, but the more important question is, what are you doing and what is getting in the way of doing it? How are you using your fear? How are you using your anger? And is that survival promoting? Because that's the most important outcome that we all want.
So if I'm reading between the lines, there's some things you're saying. Would you be, and if I'm wrong, I'm fine. Just say, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm totally fine with that. But would it be okay to say something like, when I notice that my body is reacting, when I notice I've got heightened, fear and anxiety and sensitivity, that perhaps, and again, if I'm wrong, you knock me off, that's quite fine. But perhaps if we talk to the body at that moment when we notice it and say, thank you for noticing, thank you for being aware, thank you for keeping me safe. I wonder if we sort of co-opt that experience into making it more regulated by acknowledging it and literally talking to it and acknowledging it when it happens. If I'm reading you right, this is what I feel you're saying.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you, eyes, for noticing my phone just responded to a text, right? And then as much as we can, using the energy. Anxiety has a lot of energy, and anger has even more energy. When we feel the anger, we tend to talk about what made us angry. And, that it's very, very easy in these days to be preoccupied with anger. But anger is a lifesaver in these situations. If we approach the anger as energy. So what's anger for? Anger, the biological purpose of anger is to help us defend ourselves. And of course, we've all learned to put anger into words, but when we put it into words, we tend to lose some of the energy. So I would encourage everyone listening and therapists in their work to help individuals feel the anger, feel the energy, feel the determination, and to focus on that. Because if I talk about the source of my anger, I'm going to just sort of spew it, as opposed to that anger is going to be sustaining. It's going to sustain resolve, determination, all the things that the people of Israel and Jews around the world need right now. It'll sustain that faith that,
right.
We as a people have never been demolished. We have always survived.
And we will. So let me push. I'm going to go on a limb here with something. We say in the Jewish frum world, a chiddush, a novel idea, but something I've been noticing in my practice this week, and I just love to hear your take on it. When we do PTSD work, everyone, the standard number 101 thing to do, very first thing, help people ground themselves, do grounding exercises. I'm wondering, and again, this is just me, and again, if you think this is mad, I'm more than welcome to hear it. But my feeling, I've been doing that with people, and it's not working very well. And I have a feeling it's actually not the right approach, the first approach for present traumatic stress disorder, because it's the exact opposite. In present traumatic stress disorder, I want to acknowledge what's happening. I want to acknowledge my fears. I want to stay in touch with it. But in a way, like I said, when we went into our safe room, I go there because I'm trying to do what's mature and responsible. So I've heightened awareness for my safety. That I actually don't want to ground right now. That is my first. I want to be in. Do you know what I'm saying? That's like very not in PTSD treatment to even think that way.
Yeah, so we have to take all of our usual treatment interventions and ask, is this actually adaptive in the midst of ongoing traumatic conditions? So I agree with you. I'm very fond of grounding myself, but in this situation, you want to be able to act, right? So you want to see the phone flash and get up and go. You don't want to unground yourself. You don't want to have to spend precious seconds moving from grounding to action.
Yes, I'm thinking like of a modified, different notion of grounding that we've ever thought about in PTSD work. In present traumatic stress disorder, I ground by connecting with what's happening in my body and acknowledging its benefit to me right now. And that's going to help me not get terrified, not take it over the edge, not magnify it. I think I don't know if there's research. I haven't seen it, but
we
I'm
had
guessing.
a question, Janina, Dr. Fisher, we just had a question that came in relating to what you're saying, Rabbi Russell. What if our bodies in the past have been the source of trauma through physical abuse or sexual abuse, and now you're telling people to get in contact with that part that they've avoided and buried? Are there other tools or ways that they can get in contact with their body that don't bring up a whole host of other experiences that they've tried to push away?
Yochanan, could I jump in first with a different question? Because I feel like this is going to move us to another topic. This is going to move in another direction.
Sure.
I just want to go back to this disorder that we're talking about, the present and the past. And I'm wondering if everything Rabbi Russell and Dr. Janina are saying about being able to ground ourselves, this is the opposite of, instead of grounding, we're jumping up, we're taking action, we're going to the mamad, to the room. Right. If maybe we just, the present one, we just don't call it a disorder, because a disorder is something that has happened to us. And if we only call it present traumatic stress, that's what I'm dealing with, it's not a disorder, it's healthy. Right? So like my whole reaction, instead of sitting and grounding and bringing it up and using the PIT model and using IFS, because that's already when it became a disorder. In this case, it's not a disorder. That's
exactly what I'm saying, Tzadok.
Right.
Exactly so dropping the word disorder.
Right.
Yep.
Is like it makes a whole difference.
One of our viewers can give us a new diagnosis, a new 4 letters for what we're talking about.
Healthy stress as opposed to a disorder. It's sad that we have it, but it's not a disorder, it's healthy.
Well, I think it's healthy.
Sending us into action.
Dr. Fisher, do you agree? It becomes healthy when we recognize it without feeling inferior, without feeling weak, without feeling, pathetic, me, I'm having this reaction. But on the contrary, in this circumstance, embracing it as a mature and healthy response. The goal for me would be to modify it so it doesn't interfere with my ability to do normative daily functioning. I want to function like a regular person, while I want to maintain the ability to be acutely aware of this heightened sense of security and safety that my body is telling me about. Right. I think that's what we're looking for, that balance, how to hold it, find space for it within ourselves without it overwhelming us. Does that make sense?
That's right.
I guess to me, it's just like, when does it become a disorder? That's a good answer also. And obviously also living in Israel, so what you're expressing is on a deeper level than here, because you're expecting to be functional while you're also listening out for the siren, which is different to what I'm trying to do, is just,
Right, I would need to be highly functional right now in this webinar and be lucid and conscious and aware, while I'm fully aware of the heightened sense of my heart is beating high, faster than normal in my skin. I feel it in my skin. I feel the tension and I'm listening, whether I have peripheral listening. Right. Forget about peripheral vision. I know.
It's your auditory hypervigilance. Someone in the chat just gave us a wonderful name, adaptive stress response.
Beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Adaptive stress response is going to be the new diagnosis, really, and it's not a diagnosis. It's what we all need to be reality. Yeah. By talking, Dr. Fisher, what I'm picking up from you is that we unashamedly look at ourselves, our bodies, recognize these reactions that we're having, but look at them as our friend. They're adaptive. They're there to help me. And perhaps that's the way we can contain them, make space for them, and use them in a productive way so they don't interfere with normative daily function. Does that make sense?
And then we could also embrace ourselves when they show up, because we understand this is healthy. The fear is throwing me, right? My heightened or my peripheral listening right now, it's healthy for you right now.
Yes, it is.
Right. Hypervigilance is a real blessing in the midst of an ongoing traumatic environment. Right. It's when that hypervigilance persists years and decades later that we see people suffering from post-traumatic responses.
So Dr. Fisher,
go ahead.
No, we have a couple of interesting questions coming in. Let me just, you have what we've been talking about right now is a lot of people feeling the energy tremendously. One person wrote here about what's happening now in Israel. I totally disconnect from the news, the reality of what is going on in Israel. I don't know how to connect to it in a healthy way without affecting me completely and without making me very, very depressed. It sends me into a very dark place and I have no control over my emotions. So obviously there's some people that are just feeling every part of it. And then there's many who are disconnecting from it and probably from the rest of their life. Is there a balance? What does that balance look like?
And I think, I hear the questioner saying, when I focus on what's happening, I get depressed. And the only way I can stay out of the depression is to not think about it, to not turn on the news, to not be preoccupied. Whereas trauma is very preoccupying. So especially if there are rockets flying over your home, it tends to be very preoccupying. So it's also adaptive. I appreciate the question because really, it's very adaptive to decide I am paying no attention to that which robs me of my adaptive capacity. Right. It does, the purpose of that kind of depression where you lose all your energy, you collapse, you go into dark hopelessness. The purpose of that state from a body point of view is to prepare us to submit and be demolished. And that's a state we don't want at this moment. That's not an adaptive state. And the questioner is aware of that and says, I don't want to go there. So I don't know how you feel, Rabbi Russell, but I feel like if we have to ignore things to be in our most adaptive states, let's go for it.
I think I see it the way what I'm watching the whole week and talking to people, I recognize there's such an incredibly broad spectrum of responses. We're all different. To say, here's what you're meant to do would be incredibly misleading. And I think that I absolutely understand that for some people, perhaps based on their own stories from their childhood, their own journey, or their own unique personality, it doesn't necessarily mean they went through any childhood trauma. They have different personalities. Some people need to disconnect and trust that others will deal with this situation. They just have to. Their mind works that way. On the other hand, there's people, I think like myself, from the exact opposite extreme. I think I live on the other edge, where for me, I want to be thoughtful and mindful of what's happening around me. That actually gives me strength. It gives me the, like you said before, the action. I want to do something. I want to help. I want to get involved. I want to be protected, but I also want to do something. I'm not suggesting that the others don't want to. That's not what I'm saying. Please. No. I'm simply saying there's a spectrum of responses that we really should be respectful of our own response, with the one caveat, the way I look at it, at least as I talk to my clients this week. And the caveat has been normative daily functioning. It may not be your highest level of functioning, but are you able in this, what did she call it? Adaptive stress response? Yeah, beautiful. Love that. In an adaptive stress response, perhaps the ideal is not that we're at our highest level of functioning, but we're at a level of functioning where I can continue with normative daily functioning. I don't stop going to work. I don't stop doing personal hygiene. I eat normal. I do normal things. I'm able to function. And perhaps if I'm not able to do that, and the depression the caller was talking about is so severe that I can't do that, well, that's probably an indication you should get help from a therapist who could help you work out what's holding you back. That's not something that's healthy to stay in such a place. And you probably should get some help. Would that make sense? Does that sound right?
And in the meantime, to ask a friend or family member will you walk with me to the grocery store? Will you make sure that I eat? Because my body is really not going along with this program of eating, right? So we can do deeper work, I think, after the danger is over. In the midst of the danger, I would focus more on how can we as a community help each other with those. It's really, I call it keeping on, right? So all those normal things are about carrying on, which again is how the Jewish people have survived, right? Yep. Generation after generation, people have carried on in the midst of death and destruction.
Yeah. So Janina, Jason, give me 1 second if you don't mind. Yeah. What do you have any thoughts that come to mind, Dr. Fisher, of tools? Like, in the adaptive stress response, I love the term, but in adaptive stress response, like we mentioned one tool before, talking to the parts of your body and thanking them for being there and showing up to help you. Like that's a really powerful tool. We know that as therapists, how powerful that can be. Do you have any other ideas of thoughts like movement? I told one of my clients to start doing jumping jacks and expressing very out there. They live in a very isolated place, but to do some jumping jacks and just express how they feel, like, just say it out. And they found that was movement. The movement was incredibly helpful. Do you have any, like, off the top of your head, some tools that you could share with us that might be helpful in this moment?
And Dr. Janina, I would add to that, perhaps even you might be able to do some grounding exercise with all of us on this call. Maybe there's like a tool or an experience. I know you've done it with us in the past at Fresh Start. Have been able to sort of take people on a guided meditation or journey, but figure I'd ask if it's possible.
I was thinking about that. And then
a little tiny piece before you're going to go into that. There was somebody who said on the chat, which I thought was beautiful, you could add a little more color. Somebody said, is there a grounding minute or something they could do when they go into the room? How could that room become a more of a positive experience? So when they go in there, instead of having heightened anxiety, they feel a little better. So maybe as you keep that in mind, as you walk us through a meditation or an exercise.
Right. So we'll have tools we can use in the safe room, and then tools for you're in your home and nothing, the phone says nothing is happening, but that fear is there and it's eating away, or the hopelessness is there. Those are times when just puttering, just keeping moving. These are all things I learned in the pandemic as an older person who was sort of, I used to say I was COVID fodder, right? As soon as the virus found me, I would be dead because I had all the characteristics of someone vulnerable to COVID. So I found that if I just kept moving, just puttering, which helps with that normal daily functioning too, just keep moving. Because if you're in a more enclosed space, you're not in a place where you can do jumping jacks, just movement is very helpful. For fear, one of my very favorite techniques is the hand on the heart, right? So when you feel fear, just put one or both hands on your heart and you'll begin to notice that your breath quiets. The trick is, if you have any thoughts, just drop them and just focus on your hands. And what do you notice?
Funny, I noticed myself feeling a little teary. I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
Sure why.
Yeah, because I think because it's like we're giving ourselves a little rest. This, and someone in the chat just mentioned this other technique of the butterfly hug, right? The EMDR technique of tapping alternate shoulders.
Powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one that I really like. I'm
feeling you across the screen.
Say that again.
I'm saying to Rabbi Russell that I'm feeling him across the screen.
Yeah.
Slight moment of relief with all your anxieties suddenly being able to, like, for 1 second relax and come out in pain. And that's what's going to happen post this war. But you've got a little tiny link of what it's going to look like. And I'm feeling you because you're going through so much, you and all the other Israelis on this call. So I'm feeling your pain.
Yeah.
Quite amazing. This is actually the first time I'm feeling it. It's the first time.
Wow.
Yeah. And when it's safe, we want to make room for it, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that we can embrace it and just, acknowledge you can't run from this. Right. This is where we're at. Yes, we are very confident, very strong about the nation of Israel. We are going to survive. There's no doubt. This is nothing to do with that. That's clear to us. But individually, we're going to hurt. We're going to feel pain. I came out of davening this morning and Sean met an elderly man who davens by us. I asked him how he's doing. He said, how should I be doing? He said, I've been to 7 funerals, 7 levayas of boys right in our community who've died. He said, how should I be doing? And we stood there and we both just held each other and teared up.
Right. And that is the question, how should I be doing? And we're saying that adaptive stress response doesn't mean we're doing well. It means that we are understanding and supporting our body's reactions.
I wonder if I could, Dr. Fisher, say, if you don't mind, is say adaptive stress response actually means we're doing very well. We're just not doing normal. We're not doing what we would be doing if there wasn't a traumatic event around us, but actually doing very, very well to feel our emotions, to be in touch and be able to function normally, nevertheless. That's doing very well.
Right. Absolutely.
But it's not a disorder.
It's not a disorder.
It's not a disorder. Thomas going to keep reminding us of that, and it's very important.
They got it. I'm good now. What's going on with your list?
So we just got another question on the chat, which is interesting, which comes up often. And that is, Dr. Fisher, are you able to speak about dealing with feeling resistance to even calming ourselves down? Like we feel that it's wrong of us to almost put our hand on our heart and calm ourselves down because of everything that so many others, specifically on the front lines, are feeling. I guess there's a little bit of guilt there. Can you maybe address a little bit of that and how we might handle that?
Right. And, again, survivor's guilt is going to be there and probably much more so after this war is over. But I think the answer to me is that each of us has a responsibility to contribute to the survival of the Jewish people. And that's really what Rabbi Russell meant when he said, think of going to the safe room as a social responsibility.
Correct. That's right.
Right. You don't go because you're scared. You go because it is your social responsibility.
That's correct. In fact, we say that, I've said to a number of people that when you go to the safe room, that you say to each other, why are we here? And we say, because we're mature, responsible people. That's why. Because the more if we go to the safe room as we're meant to, well, less people are going to get hurt and die. So it's responsible. And then while we're here, we say Tehillim. We say our favorite piece of Tehillim, favorite psalm. Let's talk to God and let's connect in a positive and use that time, not watching the news again, but actually saying a piece of Tehillim and doing something to connect with God. But acknowledge I'm here because it's mature and responsible.
Right. Singing, anything that can be done that brings positive energy to the body.
Yeah.
Praying, singing, yes.
Can we take some live questions here, Dr. Fisher?
Oh, of course. Yes.
Okay. Ruth, you had a question regarding, which I think is a common question. Would you like to ask it live? Well, her question is it adaptive to keep my son home from school in Israel if it triggers my PTSD?
A difficult question. Rabbi Russell, what do you think?
Say the question again. I want to make sure I got the full nuance of the question.
Is it adaptive? Is it adaptive to keep my son home from school if it triggers my PTSD?
School in Israel.
School. With sending my child to school would trigger my PTSD. Therefore, I can, in my humble opinion, maybe I'm a bit of a hardliner on this, but you do what's best for your child, and if it's triggering you, go get help. But don't keep your child home to modify your own place. Get help with that. If the norm is not to go to school, then you keep your child home. You do what's normal. And I think it's really important that the kids, look, co-regulation, this is really, really a dilemma that goes, it's so complicated because there are so many different communities, attitudes, feelings, and people. I'm really terrified to give any specific, but I want to say this much, while you can't, we have a huge, different, diverse community here. So how on earth could you answer this question? It's impossible. But I would say this. Children learn to regulate themselves from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Children absorb the primary co-regulation that occurs for any human being. The primary will come from your parents. That's where it's going to come from. Now you may have to go ahead. I'm sorry.
A moment to moment interactions with parents is what teaches us co-regulation. And if our parent is, I understand, as a parent, I wouldn't want to let my children out of my sight for a second.
That's
so
right.
It's perfectly understandable to be afraid to let them go to school. But I agree with you, Rabbi Russell. It's the child needs to feel that the world is at least a safe enough place.
Correct.
Right? If we keep them home and the co-regulation basically intravenously feeds them our fear, they're going to live with that fear for the rest of their lives.
Correct.
As much as it would be extremely hard for me to let my child go to school, I think I would have to do it because we don't want generations of terrified people. We want determined people who say, right, we survive no matter.
Right. I can, as I'm feeling the question, I'm feeling to myself that if someone chooses, because of their unique circumstances or community or situation, that I'm keeping my child home, well, I think it goes back to that message that I'm trying to convey in the safe room, is we're keeping you home because it's responsible. We're not keeping you home because we're terrified something's going to happen to you out there and we've got to hold on to you every second. But because it's not responsible in this environment, it's more safe and responsible to stay home if we can communicate it at least that way. And then you go into your bedroom and scream because you're terrified. Just do it privately with a pillow over your face and then get some help. But to the kids, let's say we're doing the responsible thing.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Right. And we're working as a team. And in this case, the team is not just the family, it's the community.
That's right. That's right. Go ahead, Janina. You have any more questions?
We have a lot of questions coming. I want to, perhaps we can move to, so we talked a lot about Israel, etc. Somebody mentioned, just living in America and just going to the gas station, being on heightened alert when the reality is that Americans are not suffering anywhere near what the people in Israel are, but obviously we're on heightened alert. Are there exercises or something we can do, again, to ground ourselves and to bring ourselves back into the present? Any thoughts?
Do we want to make sure that we feel like the Israeli part or like the people going into the rooms got an exercise that this was amazing, putting our hands on our heart? I don't know if you wanted to add something to that, because I think I interrupted with telling Rabbi Russell I feel him. Or, and then maybe we could go to the Americans. Just to...
I mean, as far as the mamad, let me just tell you, for me, going there and acknowledging while I'm there, I'm only here because it's the responsible, safe, mature thing to do. It's the socially correct thing. I'm not here because I'm terrified. And then just sit down and say one kapitel Tehillim. It doesn't last that long. You're there a minute and a half. Use the time to say some Tehillim. It's just a beautiful thing to do. And that's the grounding. Let Tehillim ground us. That's what David HaMelech gave it to us for.
Okay.
We do have a live question here. I'm going to bring in Eti. Let me allow you to talk. Eti, you're
Hello?
on. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, when I hear of a death happening, I get very hypersensitive, to my kids. My emotions will just go all over the place, and I'll just cry for every little thing, and I'll feel super guilty if I'm not the perfect mother. Maybe I when I'll check them in their bed, if maybe I wasn't the perfect mother that day, I'll feel I'll feel guilty and also scared if they're alive. And just I getting super emotional.
Understandable.
I went through a period in my life when I was a teenager where I felt for a half a year, I felt like an out-of-body experience. And this is how I feel when I go into scary things, not really living in the present, thinking the whole time that something bad is gonna happen, and being super, super, super emotional.
Right. And that feeling of something bad is going to happen, that's your body trying to warn you. Watch out, watch out. And anyone who has either had bad things happen to them is living in a currently unsafe environment. Or the other thing that's so hard here is that this systematic attack on Jews makes Jewish people everywhere feel unsafe. Right? It's not so. it's a very, very difficult time for anyone who's ever experienced trauma to now be touched by it again. And I will say, there is no way to be a perfect mother in times like these. And so, when my kids grew up, the one thing that I looked back on with regret was that I spent so much time worrying about being a perfect mother. Right? And I look back and I thought, oh, why didn't I just enjoy them instead of being so worried about doing it perfectly? So I would put them to bed at night, hug them and kiss them, thank them for being good kids. And then another day comes and they're learning, because some days are better than others. Some days we're at our best, sometimes we're at our worst. Most of the time we're in between. And that's a co-regulation experience. And they grow up getting used to. Some days are great, some days are not so good. And always our mother would thank us and tell us she loved us.
Thank you so much. I always tell them I love them, but I don't like to put them to sleep if I like for them just not feeling like like if maybe I'm not in the best mood, I always try to make myself, because I'm so scared for them to go sleep with not the comforting feeling.
And it's okay, because sometimes in life we go to bed without that comforting feeling, and that's okay, because they just need a certain number of comforting experiences. They don't need it to always be comforting.
Yeah, I think that the reason I'm always so worried is because I can't handle the feeling of going to sleep without feeling like really happy. I think that's the reason why I'm always like so concerned about it, is because I still can't handle going to sleep if I'm not feeling great.
May, can I pipe in here? It sounds like you're so in tune and aware of what's happening with yourself. I feel like there's two things here. One is you can thank Hashem for making you a mother who cares so deeply about her kids to protect them. So I would actually say it. I would speak it and say it 10 times out loud every night and just really say it loud. I thank you, Hashem, for making me a person who cares for my kids. At the same time, I think you need to realize that you perhaps are worrying a little too much here. And I'm guessing that you've seen a therapist, you're seeing a therapist, and if not, you certainly will see a therapist.
I am a somatic.
Yeah, I figured. So you're on the right place and you're doing the right work. Just thank Hashem. Thank Hashem for it out loud, that you're caring and you're loving and you want to protect your kids. And remember, as Dr. Fisher just pointed out, kids, their resilience in part comes from being able to deal with life and deal with life's problems. And they can cope with, a day here and a day there when they know their mother cares about them. They know you.
Yeah, like I even saw it, like I went shopping with one of my kids, and she's and I was like feeling very drained and because I wasn't finding anything, and she insisted that she wants to come with me, and I warned her before that I don't think you should come because I'm just going to be walking around and I don't think you're going to enjoy it. So she says she wants to come anyways. And after a while we were looking for stores and I couldn't find some stores, and there was a lot of walking, and when we finished I told her I feel so bad that you had to walk so long, and was it really worth it? And she was like, yeah, I knew it's gonna be long. Like, it's okay. Like, you know, it's fine.
It's like she just wants to be connected to you.
Dr. Fisher,
Yeah.
I think a lot of what Etty, I'm going to meet you for a moment. I think a lot of what Etty is sharing is being felt all over the place. Perhaps you can do an exercise with Etty that we will all follow along, maybe just to help her ground and become more present. And if Etty's open to it, we'll all join in our own way.
Sure. There's an exercise I've been thinking about, which again is something that you want to do when you're in a safe place, in a safe room, or in a safe environment in your home. So take a moment and just tune into your body. Notice the beating of your heart. Notice your breathing. Notice those parts of your body that feel tense. And then scan your body for some place, even a very small place, that feels calm or okay or even good. And if it's hard to find a place that feels calm or peaceful or pain-free, try places like your left earlobe, and then when you've found some place that is calm or peaceful or even feels good, bring all your attention to that place. Notice the quality of it. Is it warm? Is it airy? What sensations tell you that this place feels okay or calm? And as you notice it, you might try breathing into this place in your body. Inviting this one still point to get a little bigger. If painful feelings or thoughts come up, just go back to focusing on that still point. And notice how focusing on the still point affects your whole body. And how you can return to this place over and over and over again. As often as you need to. And then take your time, slowly coming back to the room. Putting a bookmark on that still place so you can know where to return to it again and again.
Wow. Hey, we're gonna hold that space. I do want to try and get in one more live question, Doctor.
Sure.
But we are winding down. Thank you for that. Thank you, Eti, for sharing.
Yes, thank you.
Dina, are you there?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much. It's been really helpful. I wanted to ask, I've been struggling a lot, as I'm sure many people are, and my anxiety is at an all-time high, and I just feel like my natural response to struggles in general in life is to want to run away. With everything going on at the moment, I'm not in Israel, I'm in England, but I just feel so scared. I go to the shop and I'm scared somebody's gonna attack me, and I feel like the world is shrinking in on me, and I'm struggling because my natural response is to want to run away, and here it feels like everything is closing in on me, so I can't even do that. Do you have any suggestions what I can do when these feelings come up?
Well, you can certainly thank your body for wanting to run. Is there any clear and present danger where you're living in England?
Not really, but I just feel everywhere I go, wherever I go, and there's, anybody from the Eastern culture, I just start feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm terrified they're going to attack. And I know that, like, I've got very vivid imagination, but it's kind of like wherever I go, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. I'll go out with my husband and I'll be like, don't walk in front of me, don't walk behind, you have to walk next to me because I'm so scared. And I know like it's not a normal reaction, but it's kind of how I feel all the time.
Right, because your body is feeling what I'll call the universal threat. And it's saying, watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out, constantly. So it's probably, your body's probably triggered by going out to different places. Obviously, triggered by anyone who looks like, who looks Arab, I would guess. And so it's, it's like a smoke detector that is going off when the toast burns because it's so sensitive. And if you've experienced trauma in your past, as so many people have, the sense of danger is going to be very present right now. It'll be triggered by so many things. And we forget that past trauma isn't just memories of what happened in the past. Most of the time, when people get traumatically triggered, what they get are feelings and body sensations. They get what I call feeling memories or feeling flashbacks. I think you're having a lot of feeling flashbacks, as I'm sure millions and millions of people are these days, because the world doesn't feel safe right now, even here in the United States.
You're saying that,
especially here. Say that again.
So what you're saying is that this is in a way a normal response?
Yeah. So think of it as a feeling flashback. Oh no, I'm having more feeling flashbacks. Oh, the feeling flashbacks are better if my husband walks next to me. But think of them as feeling flashbacks, because that's really what they are.
Right. Yeah.
Flashbacks, I mean flashbacks to her own story or flashbacks to things that happened in previous generations?
It's feeling flashbacks. And it could, so we don't know, right? So most people who've had trauma haven't just had one event. They've lived in traumatic environments. They are the children of parents who lived in traumatic environments. They carry what I call the intergenerational legacy of the diaspora. And so the thing about a feeling flashback is that you can't link it to any particular set of events. It's a feeling memory. And we all have more feeling memories than we have event memories.
If I could just add just one tiny piece, that we all know that being anxious about being anxious makes you worse.
Yeah.
And in this case, where we're living, I wouldn't say with real and present danger, but real and present worry about danger. Yeah. And that maybe we can modify it that way, that I'm not actually living with danger, but I'm actually living with real and present worry about danger, which separates from, it kind of externalized the danger, but here I'm living with the worry of danger. And you know what, that's good. It's good that I'm alert, but I'm not actually living with the danger. I'm living with the worry about it.
Right. And I think that's a great distinction from what this participant said. She's also having feeling flashbacks. So yeah. I think the worry about danger is I'm having it. I mean, and I'm sure people all over the world are having it, yes. And but it's even worse when you have feeling flashbacks and you feel the terror as if it were happening now.
That's correct. So I think I can live with being right in the present world we're living in today. I think I can live with worrying about it rather than living with actual danger, and I can make that distinction. I think if we can work towards separating like that, it makes it a lot easier to live with.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Dr. Fisher, with 5 minutes left, and you've thrown a few tools here. Is there any other go-to tools you want to share for those either on the front lines or those in the diaspora? Any further thoughts on that? And then we'll ask you just for final thoughts before we wind down, so we're respectful of your time.
The other suggestion I had, I don't know that I would call it a tool, is to work toward achieving states of calm but alert. Because we are actually going to be able to protect ourselves better if we're not panicky, right? Because when you're panicky, you're actually not very focused, right? When you're calm but alert, you're very focused, right? You're focused on the sounds of sirens. You're focused on your phone. You're focused on where you are, who's around you. In a state of calm, that's when we're most vigilant and can best protect ourselves. And so to take these fear states that we're all experiencing in one way or another and work toward a state of very focused alertness with calm, that's the most protective state we can achieve.
Thank you. And Rabbi Russell, before I ask you for just closing comments, I just want to remind everybody this will be available on YouTube, on our just YouTube Jewish Fresh Start. It'll be on our YouTube channel. Rabbi Russell, thank you. Dr. Fisher, thank you. Like I said early on, being a leading voice in the mental health world, your compassion, understanding, and guidance means the world to us and our community. Thank you, everybody. But Rabbi Russell, please sort of wrap up what was a very loaded. I apologize. We had dozens of questions. We tried to pick as many of them from within Israel, from the diaspora. We did our best. So I apologize for the specific questions that may have not been answered. But Rabbi Russell, perhaps wrap this up and help us make it a good day.
First of all, also thank Dr. Fisher. Really, thank you so much. I think we need to do this like every night for a couple of hours. We should really what we need. That's really what we need. I find the connection with others, talking, connecting, exposing, being vulnerable creates so much safety, so much healthiness. For me, look, as I said at the beginning, we know the Jewish people, we as a nation will survive. We have a tremendous power in our faith in God. Tremendous, tremendous power. There's I've had a banner on my phone for the longest time. 3 words, Einod Milvado. The Einod Milvado in Hebrew, it means there's nothing but the power of God. And we know from our history that when we focus on that and we meditate on that and we think about those words, that God is with us, Einod Milvado. Hashem will save us, Hashem will guide us. And I think it's really, I know I myself practice this, that every day I take a few moments to just sit, breathe, and think of those words and say them over to myself. Even as I'm getting red alerts on my phone constantly, they're coming in. But Einod Milvado, that's the power of our survival. It's the power of continuity, because God will save us. We know that, and we should tap into that most deeply, each of us in the quiet of our own room. Find a place, sit, breathe, ground, and think of those words, Einod Milvado. God will be with us, and we will survive. Dr. Fisher, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This has it's been such a pleasure to be with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Further collaboration
Thank you
Take
so much.
care. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.